Tonight we're going to do a little exploring of some more American Old West cowboys. Nothing says America more than the American cowboy. The whole world knows us as the cowboy people. They see us as the Old West. They watch all the old reruns of all the old Western TV shows in those foreign countries, and they really think that we are really cowboys per se. But tonight we're going to talk about some of the cowboys that don't get mentioned very much, especially African American cowboys and African American men of the West. We know about Bass Reeves. We know who he was. We know about Deadwood Dick, aka Nat Love. We know about Bill Pickett. You know, we know about the good guys. The guys I just named were some of the good guys of the American West. And tonight we're going to take on the stories of the Black outlaws of the American West. Now, instead of me just telling you these guys' names and the crimes they committed, I'm going to read a little biography of each one of these individuals. Tonight, guys like Bass Reeves, U.S. Deputy Marshal, had to go out and capture bad guys. He captured probably more bad guys than any U.S. Marshal in those times. And many of the ones he captured were black men. He captured bad guys of all races, and some was black. But I'm going to start out with one bad guy he captured that may shock a lot of you. He captured a young bad guy named Ben Reeves. Ben Reeves was Bass Reeves's son. And let me tell you a little bit about him. First off, in the early afternoon of June 7, 1902, young Ben Reeves paid a visit to his estranged wife. Her name was Costella Brown, at her cousin's house not far from their home in Muskogee, Oklahoma. When he asked her about an alleged infidelity, he suspected her of cheating on him. She replied that, yes, it's true. I've been cheating on you. According to Ben, she was unapologetic and said she thought more of the man little finger that she was cheating with than she did of his whole body. Well, he became enraged. He got angry and he killed her right on the spot. Now, in a statement he gave in February of 1903, he said, "My constant worry over her actions and the breaking up of my home and receiving such an answer, I lost all control and I just shot her dead." But when he just shot her dead, he ran and he became an outlaw. And U.S. Marshals was looking for him. Bass Reeves went to the U.S. Marshal's office and said, "I would like to take this case because this is my son. And I know if any of the other marshals go after my son, he's going to end up dead." So Bass Reeves was given the warrant to go and find his son. And after some time, and after running him down, tracking him and hunting like marshals do, he found his son. And since there was his father, there was no gunplay, there was no fighting, there was no fussing. The son just surrendered, and his dad arrested him, took him back to court at Fort Smith. And you will hear a lot about Fort Smith because that was the circuit judge at Fort Smith Parker, Ike Parker. He handed out most of the Western justice for criminals. Anyway, they sentenced him to life in prison, but after 10 years, his sentence was commuted and he was freed from prison. Now that was Ben Reeves, Baz Reeves' son. So we know Baz was a good guy. And his son really wasn't a criminal, but he got upset and he turned into a criminal when he murdered his wife. And that's the story about Baz Reeves' bad days that I'm sure that hurt his heart to have to go chase his son down and bring him to justice. Now, I'm going to talk more about some real bad guys who were bad guys and who planned on being bad guys. We discussed some of these men, their criminal behavior, and a lot of these men got captured and paid for their crimes with their lives. Men like Cherokee Bill, Isom Dart, Ben Hodges, and Rufus Buck. There were others, but these guys stood out among their peers in crime. The first guy will be Cherokee Bill. I could just tell you what he did, but I'm going to read this to you guys. Cherokee Bill was born Crawford Goldsby on February the 8th, 1876. His father, George Goldsby, was from Perry County, Alabama. He was a sergeant of the 10th United States Cavalry, a Buffalo soldier. His mother, Ellen Beck Goldsby Lynch, was a Cherokee freedwoman of mixed African and Indian ancestry. So his mother was part Native American, part Black. And she was given Cherokee Nation status because her grandfather was full-blooded Cherokee, and they could prove it. And plus, she was, at one time, she had been a slave on the Cherokee Nation. So hence, that's how he got the name Cherokee Bill, because of his mother. He became an outlaw at age 18 years old. He was so mean and heartless that they started calling him just an evil wolf. He murdered 7 men, including his sister's husband, over just a couple of dollars that he owed him. Cherokee Bill and his gang terrorized Oklahoma for over 2 years before U.S. Marshals captured him. When they captured him, locked him up in jail, somehow or another he got a hold of a gun while he was behind bars. And he tried to force the jail guard to open the cell, told him to come in and unlock the door. And the jailer told him, "No, I'm not going to let you out." He shot and killed that jailer through the bars. So you can see Cherokee Bill was somebody not to play around with. He'd already killed 7 men. And so killing one more didn't mean anything to him. He killed his sister's husband, so killing that jailer didn't mean anything to him. However, he went to Judge Parker at Fort Smith, Arkansas, which sits on the border of Arkansas and Texas. He was tried for his crimes. He was found guilty for his murders, and he was hanged at the ripe old age of 20 years old. Now, there's more to Cherokee Bill's story, and I recommend that you go to the library or find a book called The Black West by William Loren Katz, K-A-T-Z, Katz. Now, you probably heard stories of Cherokee Bill because they've romanticized him several times on TV. But they always play him because it's from the angle of trying to tell Black history, they always portray him as sort of a good character, but he wasn't really a good character. He was a stone cold killer, and he paid for his crime. And you can imagine he was 18 when he started killing, and 2 years later he was dead. So crime didn't pay then, just like it doesn't pay now. Now, this next character, I put him in there, but he's really not, he's really not what you would call a real hard case criminal. But, all black outlaws was not as ruthless as Cherokee Bill. Some were fast talking line con men and thieves. And this guy, Ben Hodges, he was a very colorful fellow who came up to Texas, from Texas, with a cattle drive to Dodge City. Back in the days when they only had them longhorn steers, he caught a ride as a cook with the with the herd, and he was on a cattle drive, and he came to Kansas. Now, this guy was more or less just a loudmouth line thief. That's basically what he was. He wasn't a killer, but he did steal, and he told a lot of lies. The story is that he tells a story about how he came to be who he is. He said that his father, a young black man, fell in love with a Mexican Castilian girl. She was supposed to be so beautiful, and the young black man was supposed to be so handsome, and they fell in love. But these Mexican upper crust people, that Castilian, mean these were high class Mexicans who was more or less from Spain, not really Mexicans. They lived in Mexico, but they was actually Spanish. Castile is in France and in Spain. So he tells a story that his mother was a high society gal from Castile, Spain, who lived in Mexico. And they did get married, but his mother family did not approve of her marrying this black man. So when he was born, the mother family convinced her to get rid of this black man, to leave him and come back to them with the baby. She went back home with the little black baby who became Ben Hodges, but all her family did to him is mistreat him. So by the time he was 12 years old, he ran away from home. He couldn't take it anymore. He just couldn't take it. You know, she left her husband, went back home to her family with her baby, and she had to get out of Dodge. He had to get out of Dodge because they was mistreating the boy. I can imagine, you can imagine, you don't little black thing around there, and they don't like you, and they gonna do you bad. But anyway, with that type of background, that type of action going on with him, that just inspired him to do something else. And he never forgot that he was part Mexican. He loved to brag about having descended from one of the finest Castilian families of Mexico. And some of his buddies decided to play a trick on him. Rumors were heard that thousands of acres of rangeland in New Mexico were part of an old Spanish land grant and that the grant was still valid. And several of his cattleman friends came up with a fake story to tell him that you can go and get this written up by a land SL, and you can sell some of them land grants and get rich. And guess what? He didn't know it was a joke. It was just a joke. But he went to Texas. He took a trip to Texas. He returned back to Kansas with a number of documents showing him to be the legitimate claimant of the grant, as well as the representative of other claimants living in San Antonio. Armed with these documents, he found a local lawyer willing to take the case and they drew up papers for the claim. Now he was sincere about it. He was trying to fool people. So he was selling these claims that he knew that he had faked, like he had land. So he's selling all these claims of different land blocks. But he got caught because his claims could not be proven in court. And he enjoyed the little prestige while he was doing it. Everybody thought he was a big shot. But he ended up being caught. And the courts didn't do much to him. They just stopped him from doing it and let him go. He also loved to tell tall tales about how he was such a great fighter and he could shoot a gun so fast and how quick he was and quick draw McGraw and all that stuff. The fact was, however, he was just telling lies. He told lies all the time. His lies were to build up his ego, and his stealing amounted to only petty thievery. He was known to have hidden a few cattle and horses away until a reward was offered, and then suddenly he would find them and claim the reward. So what he was doing, he would steal people cows and horses, hide them someplace, and then wait until these people put up a reward for these animals. Then he'll go and find these animals, supposedly, and bring them back to these people and get the reward. What he was doing is just, he was just a thief. He was being Mr. Slick Man. And he
Sound
had
like
no
he was an
money.
entrepreneur to me, Lee.
Who is that?
Sound like he was an entrepreneur.
Yeah, yes, he was an entrepreneur. He, he'll find them. And one time he got too big for his britches. One time he went to a dairy farm, stole the man whole herd of milk cows, stole them all. But the man kind of figured he had done this, so he took him to court. Now he had no money, he had no lawyer. All he had was a bad reputation. Everybody knew he was a thief. But he pleaded his own case. After all the evidence had been presented, he arose to address the jury. He talked for 2 whole hours, sometime making the jury laugh. Sometime he made them cry, telling them about his ancestors from Spain and Mexico, lying about that as well. Lied like he was the sole owner of all this land, and why would I want to steal cows, and y'all know I didn't do this, and just telling a tale, just telling tale. He told so many lies in that courtroom until the jury found him not guilty. He was he was very persuasive, bewildering, and entertaining. When he finished pleading his case, he won the case. They said, "Oh, this man, he is not guilty. He couldn't have done this." However, however, a few days later, the missing cattle seemed to just come home by themselves. He had stolen them and driven them about 50 miles away, but he had left them unguarded. Nobody was guarding them, and the cows just wandered back home. Fortunately for him, they came home and he was nowhere around them. So he got away with that. So Ben Hodges, he was just a liar, con man, and petty thief. And do you know he was contemporary with Wyatt Earp? They also gave him a phony badge and a shotgun with no shells when he became a senior citizen and let him walk around Dodge City like he was a big shot. And when he finally died, they buried him right next to Wyatt Earp because the town thought of him as, like, how in the old Western you got the town drunks. People like the town drunk. Well, they thought of him just a town liar. And so they gave him a little honor for being just a liar, even though he wasn't a hardened criminal, but he was a thief. And that story is probably the most entertaining one that I've read because there's much more to his story. And he was just a funny guy, like somebody's old grandpa that set up and just tell lies on top of lies. And they sound real good. People believed him. He convinced that court that he didn't steal those cows when he know he stole them. Now this guy, the next guy, Isom Dart, he has a tragic story, but he was a criminal. But he didn't start out as a criminal. Nobody usually starts out as a criminal. He started out as a slave. He was born in Arkansas in 1849, and he was originally known as Ned Huddleston. And he gained his reputation in the Wyoming territory. He had many aliases. He kept changing his name. First he called himself the Black Fox. Then he called himself the Tan Mexican. Then he called himself the Calico Cowboy. At the age of 12, Huddleston accompanied a Confederate soldier to Texas where they was going to steal food and supplies for the Confederate troops during the Civil War. Returned to Arkansas at the end of the war, he was freed and drifted throughout the West. En route to Texas, he stopped to work as a camp cook at a railroad, Carmichael Railroad, in the Wyoming Territory. It was a coal mining railroad known for its diversity, saloons and outlaws. In other words, blacks, whites, Indians, they all was there and they got along pretty good. He would soon earn a new nickname, Quick Shot, after firing his six-shooter, leaving five headless sage hens in Wyoming meadow. The unbelievable feat was one of the many tales of the Wyoming desperado. In other words, he turned into a quick shot. He turned into a guy that could really shoot his pistol. He could shoot quick, fast, accurate, and he got respect from the people in that town. But since he was in that town, he saw that there was more opportunity, people coming in and out, different cowboys coming and going, and he wasn't making very much money. He drifted as far as the Texas-Mexico border where he tried his hand as a horse thief and cattle rustler. Those things can get you hung in the Old West. You want to be a horse thief and a cattle rustler. That wasn't a good trade for him to pick up, but he picked it up. It created more profit for him than being a cook, so he stuck with that. He stole horses and cattle in Mexico, drove them across the Rio Grande River, and sold them in Texas. That's how he made his money. He moved northwest to Colorado, bought him a ranch with some of that stolen money, changed his name to Isom Dart. That's how he got to be Isom Dart. He changed his name again because, see, he's an outlaw. He can't go by all those other names because people will know who he is. So he changed his name again. He fell in love with a Native American Shoshone woman, got married to her, became a little rancher for a while, brunk buster, brunk and breaking horses for a ranch. He got tired of living on that ranch, and life of crime just kept pulling him back. Crime and gambling, fights, gunfights, and encounters with the law pulled him back into the life of crime. So he left his wife and he left that nice ranch that he had and he joined a gang called the Tip Galt Gang. They were a bunch of outlaws who just, their business was cattle rustling. They stole cattle. By 1899, the Browns Park Range War was in full swing. You know, you watch some of these old westerns where they have a range war where two cattle companies are fighting over the land who's gonna graze their cows. You know, you can't graze your cows on my land. You can't graze. So they began fighting over the land. Well, anyway, that range war was going on full swing. The Brown Park Range War was with the Two Bar Ranch and Cattle Company and the Snake River Stock Growers Association, attempting to push out all the small ranchers. Dart and this woman named Ann Bassett, also known as Queen Anne, and she ran the Bassett Ranch. but she was a cattle rustler. She was a cattle thief. All of her cows that she had on her ranch was stolen. She and Dart stole more cattle from that other company, two bar company, than you can shake a stick at. So this company decided, you know what? We're fed up with these rustling activities. We're fed up with these people stealing our cows. So they hired a notorious range detective named Tom Horn. Any of you ever heard of Tom Horn? Tom, Steve McQueen played him in a movie. Tom Horn is a real character that was a range detective. He would be hired by cattle companies to find rustlers and take them out. Okay? He didn't take them to jail, he sent them to hell. And that is exactly what Tom Horn's job was. Tom Horn, in hopes of driving small ranchers from their land, Dart received a notice ordering him to leave the area. Tom Horn put a note on his door. We know you're a cattle rustler. This is your choice. Leave the area. I don't want to have to confront you. Leave the area. Other people received those same warnings. They left, but not Mr. Isom Dart. He saw his threatening note. He refused to leave. He said, I'm not leaving my home. I'm not leaving Colorado. I'm going to stay right here. I'm not afraid of no Mr. Tom Horn. Well, what he didn't realize is that he thought he was going to get in a gunfight, quick draw McGraw, like you see in the movies where they stand across each other, pull the guns out and get shooting and stuff. No, Tom Horn used to carry a 4440 Winchester, and he would shoot you from a half a mile away. And that's exactly what he did with Dart. On the morning of October the 3rd, 1900, Dart walked out of his cabin door and Horn shot him dead right through the back of his head. Isom Dart was 51 at the time of his death, and his grave site is still in Colorado, and they sell tickets for you to see it. Now, he was a bad man. He was a cattle rustler, and he was a tough guy who decided he didn't want to leave. I'm not leaving. No one's going to run me away. And he got what tough guys get. He gets shot in the back because I'm not going to face you when I know you can shoot better than me. I'm just going to shoot you in the back. I'm going to sneak up on you and kill you. And that's what he did. Now, I'm going to tell you something about the white man, Tom Horn. The white man, Tom Horn, was accused of shooting a young 14-year-old boy for stealing a cow. He swore that he didn't do it. Well, they hung Tom Horn for shooting that 14-year-old boy. So he lived by the rifle and he died by the same type of death that he had been giving people. But anyway, that's another story. That's a white cowboy. I'm gonna get off of him. Now, guys, this is probably the most notorious black and Indian gang of outlaws that the West ever knew. It was called the Rufus Buck Gang. The Rufus Buck Gang was a group of outlaws who terrorized part of the West during the late 1800s. They were some of the most notorious criminals in American history. That's all the history book said. Some of the most notorious criminals in American history. The Rufus Buck Gang was a group of African American, mixed breed, Black and Native American outlaws who operated in the Indian Territory, what we call Oklahoma today. The gang consisted of 5 members. Rufus Buck, he was the leader. He was the full black man. Lewis Davis, he was mixed breed. Sam Sampson, he was mixed breed. Mamoa July, he was mixed breed. And Lucky Davis, he was a black man, total black. The gang was considered very dangerous. The gang was made up of teenage boys and young men who had grown up during a time of great turmoil for Native American population of the United States. Now, these black people had lived, these guys, they're black, their parents, and they grew up on the Native American reservation because their parents had once been slaves to the five civilized tribes, Choctaw, Cherokee, Seminole, Creek, and it's another one I can't think of it right now. But they grew up on these reservations, so they considered themselves Indians even though they were black. So first off, that would explain why they were all mixed black and Indian and black and why they was running around terrorizing the Indian reservation. Okay, now their families had raised them knowing how they had lost their sacred lands. This led to anger and resentment towards the government and white people in general. The loss of their culture angered Rufus Buck and his gang and created harsh village vigilantes out of them with one goal in mind: we killing white folks. We sick of them, we kill them. They went on a crime spree. Now listen to this. This is the amazing thing. They went on a crime spree that lasted just a little bit over 1 week. On this crime spree, during this crime spree, about 8 or 9 day crime spree. Over the course of the week, they killed a U.S. deputy marshal, assaulted a white woman. I'm sorry, assaulted a white man and his daughter in a wagon and kidnapped the girl at gunpoint. They killed a young black boy, beat another man until they mistakenly believed he was dead, then took his boots, money, and saddle. They robbed two general stores in Oklahoma, killed two white women, and a 14-year-old girl. That was the girl that they had taken from the man. Okay. They assaulted another woman, but she lived. Now, these women that they were killing, they was raping them. They raped them and they killed them, including the 14-year-old girl. They raped this other woman. She survived. When the U.S. Marshals captured the gang, a week later, they was captured. When they captured the gang and tried to bring them into town and put them in jail, the mob almost took them from the U.S. Marshals, and you know the rest. They almost hung them right there on the street. But the Marshals was able to fight them off and lock them up. Altogether, during that week, from July the 30th, 1895 to August 4th, 1895, they raped three women and killed five people in 1 week. 1 week, mind you. They went to trial when the U.S. Deputy Marshals and the Creek Light Horse Police caught up with the gang outside of Muskogee, Oklahoma. The Native American police and the U.S. Marshals worked together to capture this gang because the Native Americans had just as much right because these people actually lived on a reservation. Part of them was Native American, some of them were not, but they worked together to catch him. They caught up to him and they had an all day long gunfight. But at the end of the gunfight, the gang had to surrender because they ran out of bullets. Okay? And they had to go face the punishment for being a bunch of young murdering guys like they were. The Creek Indians and the United States disagreed on who should be allowed to prosecute these men. But the United States ended up taking the gang to Fort Smith, Arkansas, to face the hanging judge, Isaac Parker. When they were brought to court later in the year, they were convicted of rape and murder and sentenced to hang. However, they appealed it. They got some lawyers somehow, and they appealed that verdict, and they delayed the execution until the appeal went through. It didn't take years like it does today. It was just a couple of weeks. But anyway, in the end, the appeal failed, and Judge Parker was given an opportunity to resentence them to death. The execution of the five members of the Rufus Buck gang occurred on July 1st, 1896. That was just 2 years before my father was born. My father was born in 1898. And these guys was killed July 1st, 1896. They was hung. It was the second to last execution to occur at Fort Smith. The Buck gang were the only men to die on the gallows for rape. And the only reason they was killed for rape because they raped the women and killed the women. So they was killed for that. You know, me especially, I love to watch westerns. I love to find out about black cowboys, and I found out about a bunch of them, the good guys, and I found out about the bad guys. Although African Americans helped to develop the West, they played many roles. They were not just cowboys. They was miners, trailblazers, mountain men, or simple cooks. They also had their share of criminal outlaws. There were others who ran afoul of the law, but the ones we discussed tonight made the history books by name and deed. Uh, so the criminal element that we encounter today that runs rampant in every major metropolitan of this country, you've always had it. It's just more of them now than it was then, but you've always had them. It's not new. Law enforcement have always had a problem with criminals. And in the black community, it's no different. We had black gangs. There were other black members who created all sorts of problems. U.S. Marshals, black and white, had their hands full trying to stop these marauding, murdering people. I mean, the movies play them up to make them like, they make Black Bart, and they have the guys in the black hats and the black outfits, and they always seem to be the bad guys. And they try their best not to show the black men as bad guys because you have too many people complaining about it. It'll be considered racist. But you had black outlaws out west, whether it was racist or not, they were there. Hope you guys enjoyed that bit of history. And are there any questions about anything that we went through?
Lee, I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you for this information. When you were explaining about Ben Reeves, it made me think about this program Snapped. I watched it sometime. It seemed like Ben just snapped. So I'm glad that that his dad was able to catch him and he was able to get out after 10 years. But thank you for this information because some of these people I never heard of before, and it's very interesting. I took me some notes. So,
Good, good. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Lee, I have a question about Rufus Buck. There's a movie, and I don't know if you've seen it or not. The Harder They Fall.
Yeah, the line
It,
is Western Moving TV.
okay, that's what I was gonna say. Are they lying? Are they lying about it or
They
what?
lying, they lying, they worse than Ben Hodges. They lying like a big dog. Everything in that movie is a lie.
Now,
Okay.
Lee, I was planning on going to watch that movie because I had Googled it while you were talking. I said, "Oh, there's a movie out there. I'm gonna go see
Yeah.
it." Now I don't need to go see it, huh?
Oh, you can go watch it, but I just want you to realize it's just for entertainment. It's definitely what they did in that movie is they use names of real live people. Some of these people I just talked about, they use those names, but they lying. Everything they have in that movie is a lie.
Okay.
Everything in that movie is a lie. Now, did you watch that movie, Regina?
No, no, no. I was going to, but I don't
Oh,
need to see it now. That's why I was asking you before I get, because I don't like to get off up in something if it's wrong. So you just
well,
cleared it up for me and Miss Ruffin.
yeah. Well, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna tell you not to watch it. I'm just gonna tell you. I'm just gonna tell you since I'm y'all historian here. I'm just gonna tell you the honest truth. That movie is 100% false.
Well,
It's
I
But
think
it's
I'm
a good,
gonna
pure
go
it's a
watch it
real,
then. I
entertainment.
just want to see the lies they're gonna tell.
Yeah. Well, you can look
I
at
just
it.
want
Go
to
and
hear the
look at it.
lie.
You can
Yeah,
go and look at it.
I do. I think I'm gonna look at it. But what
Yeah.
I found very interesting in the lives of these people that you just talked about, most of what the crimes that they committed was over a short period of time, except for the one Cherokee Bill who did what he did over a 2 year period or maybe a 1.5 year period because I don't know how long he was in jail before they caught him or whatever. But but everybody else, I mean, the ones that really committed a crime. I'm not talking about the cattle. I mean, the
You're not talking
murdering
about being
kind.
Hodges. You're talking about the ones that was committing. Now, let me tell you now, cattle rustling was a crime. And
Right?
cattle
But they didn't
rustling,
murder anybody. Yes, I mean, because
no, he
I
didn't
think
murder. No,
horse stealing
he
was
didn't
a
commit
crime too,
murder. He
wasn't
didn't
it?
commit murder. But cattle rustling will get you killed in
But
the
wouldn't horse
1800s.
stealing do the same thing though?
Huh?
Horse stealing,
No, see, no.
or did
Car, they don't compare. They don't compare the car to that. Cause see, back in
no?
those
I said
days,
horse,
oh,
horse.
right, the horse. But see, stealing horses, that was the only means of transportation.
Okay,
So you steal a man's horse, then you left him a foot. He got to walk places, and they would kill
right,
you for that. You stole his cattle. You messing with his money. He gonna kill
right.
you for that. And the law also had laws where they would hang you for that. So that's why you can't look at the horse stealing and cattle theft as a light crime because it wasn't.
Okay,
It wasn't a light
okay.
crime. The only one in here that I talked about that had a light crime was Ben Hodges because he
Okay.
was always just trying to do trickery. He trying to fool you. He wasn't really trying to steal. He trying to do trickery. He gonna steal your cows and then bring them back after he get the reward. See, that's just a sleight of hand.
So I know you chose this subset to talk about, but the other black outlaws, did they also commit crimes just over a short period of time before they were caught and killed
Well,
or caught and put in jail?
the reason that was short periods of time is because U.S. Marshals and U.S. Deputy Marshals would get after these guys. They had wanted posters for them. They would get after these guys, and they caught these guys. And when they went to court, it was no such thing as plea bargaining and all this. We gonna let you out of no. You going to jail or you getting dead. That was it. See, nowadays, it take longer because the courts have changed drastically. But yes, there were other outlaws. You had black gunfighters who were not really considered criminals because they were gunfighters. They would get in gunfights. They were more or less protecting themselves, quick draw. Some guy challenged him and he outdraw him. And he had a reputation, but the town still didn't like him. But since he was black, every time he killed a man, he had to leave town. Because see, he killed a white man in a gunfight, he gotta leave town. Because see, they gonna shoot him in the back. They didn't mind that stuff about don't shoot a man in the back. Well, that's for the movies. They shot you in the back. So, but especially the black cowboys. Black cowboys got along fine as long as they didn't mess with white women and didn't kill white men. They got along just fine until they did those things. Quickest way for a black cowboy to get killed, whether he was a criminal or a good guy, was to mess with a white woman, especially a white woman that wasn't a prostitute. She can want him all she want. She can let him and whatever. And you know what they did every time they got caught with one? He raped me and he got dead. So they just kind of just left them alone. That's why you always hear they married an Indian woman. Because see, it wasn't a lot of black women out west until they started. We had the lesson about the mail order brides. It wasn't a lot of black women out west at first. It was a lot of black men. And so they end up, marrying Indian women because they couldn't mess with the white women. And the white men considered the Indian just to be the same as the black folks, so they didn't care. And the Indian didn't look at your race. They looked at your courage and your behavior and your spirit. And that's how they judge you. Any more questions?
Mr. Robinson.
Yes, sir.
First, I'll tell everyone if you just want, from a visual perspective, to see black cowboys, The Harder They Fall. It's a movie to watch just to visually see black people in the old west. That's something that we don't get to see in entertainment. But it is 100% inaccurate. It's false. Don't You cannot watch it and think, oh yeah, Brother Robinson told us about this. Nope, no, because he does not like that. So if you just want to see it and just look at it for what it is, you'll be good. The question I have for you, and you just mentioned it about the marshals. How active were the Buffalo Soldiers? Did the Buffalo Soldiers ever have to go after any of these criminals, or was that
All
considered?
the time. Buffalo Soldiers went at, they didn't go after a individual, they went after gangs. Buffalo Soldiers went after marauding gangs that would come to a town and just take over the town. They would just overrun the town, run the sheriff. You know, they had a little local sheriff. They were running a little local sheriff out of town to kill him, and they would just simply take over the town. Well, when the town people got tired of it, they would write to Washington to get some action, and they would send the Buffalo Soldiers, and because that was part of their mission out west. And the Ninth and Tenth Cavalry would go, and they would take the town back. Matter of fact, uh, they ran Billy the Kid out of a town one day. The Buffalo Soldiers, they ran him out of town. Buffalo Soldiers. That was I was about to say this. If you want to watch a good true to life movie with some black cowboys, watch a movie called The Buffalo Soldiers with oh, let me get his name right now. Danny Glover.
Oh, okay. I think I've seen that.
Yeah. Watch that movie with Danny Glover, The Buffalo Soldiers. And uh you want to see another movie, it's old and it's dated, but watch the one with Sergeant Rutledge with Woody Strode. Okay? Those movies are more true to life than anything that's in that Harder They Fall.
You said
Sergeant
with
Rutledge,
Woody. You
Woody
said with
Strode. Strode. Yeah, those movies are good. I like those movies. Anybody else?
Mine is just more of a thank you. These are always so informational and definitely excited to hear about the Black history and the part, good, bad, or ugly that Blacks played in this era. So I thank you so much for putting this together. My mind is still just kind of reeling through these stories because I'm like, wow. I mean, they were some gangsters for real, but this is wild to hear it and get an understanding of it. And I thank you for clearing that up about the harder they fall because I had no clue. I did see the movie and it was definitely entertaining, but to hear that it was filled with lies is kind of disappointing.
Yeah, it was entertaining, but it was I'd say that they even had people out of context. They had some people in the movie, they had names that did not live at the same period of time in the movies.
Oh, wow. Crazy. No research at all, huh? They did reverse research to make that movie.
Yeah, they were just trying to make some money and they knew black folks would see it because it was a movie with black cowboys. But it's don't hang your hat on that one as a true story or anything even close to the truth. I've been liking cowboys since I was a kid. I did a thesis paper in school on black cowboys, and I got A on that, but the thesis was basically of how they was omitted from the history books, and we had bad men and good men, you know, uh, in the cowboy in the black cowboys. Because see, most people are on the impression cowboys, the cowboy era did not start until about 1870, and black people were not slaves then. And black men who had left slavery, all of them didn't want to still be farmers and working on no plantations. And a lot of them didn't want to go to New York and Chicago and St. Louis. They didn't want to go there either. They were adventurous and they wanted to do something that had some adventure in it and some risk in it. So they went out west. And brother, there's a lot of adventure out. It was a lot of adventure out west. But anyway, before I forget, Natalie, I want you to write this down.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay, for our next, I'll have to come up with a date, but for our next presentation, it is going to be called African Americans and the Revolutionary War of 1776.
Okay, African Americans in the Revolutionary War of 1776.
Yes, there's a lot of confusion by today's African Americans about 1776 and black people. And I want to clear it up, at least for you guys. I can't tell the whole country, but we can clear up some of this stuff. that a lot of them have the wrong idea. And
Sounds good.
I'll come up with a date next month sometime and let you know.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
And I thank all you guys for listening and paying
Thank
attention.
you, Brother Robinson. Thank you for always
You.
keeping us informed. There's never a time that I get on here and that I don't learn something about Black history. So thank you so much.
You all
Okay,
will.
but Lee, I had one additional comment. I know the one. Let me see who's that. Let me see. Ned Huddleston. Ned Huddleston. You should say Ned or Ned Huddleston.
With Ben Hodges
Isom
or
Dart.
Isom Dart.
Isom Dart.
Isom Dart.
Uh, no, that wasn't him. That
Okay.
wasn't him.
Buck, Rufus Buck. Ben Reeves.
Okay, no, I guess it was Buck Game. Well, you said
Yeah,
they raped
Buck
the
game.
women before they killed them. You know, when I watch Western movies, and most of them have white characters, as you know,
Yeah.
but in those movies, that's all they ever did to white women. If they were caught at home and a
Yes.
stranger passed by,
Yes.
if they
Yes.
were caught at home by themselves, they
Yes.
like they always raped the women all the time.
And you know what, Beatrice? That is a true depiction of how the American territory out west, the frontier, when there were, farmhouses and farms were miles apart.
Yes,
And
yes.
then people lived at least 10 miles from a town. So if the husband left home and went out in the field or went to town or went hunting, wherever he went, if his wife wasn't efficient with a gun and wasn't afraid to use it, she became just a victim to these marauding lowlifes that would come by their farm. And
Because
they
that's what I
would,
was going to ask you. Was that a true depiction of what was
that's
actually happening?
that's a true depiction.
Because it happened. I mean, in
Yes,
almost all of the Western
yes,
movies.
that's a true depiction because
Wow.
what well, I don't know how to phrase it except just saying this. Women just don't know how far they have come. You know, women, black women, white women, all women. Because if they found black women at those places, they raped them too. Okay. So women, they did that all the time. These outlaws would do that all the time. And that's why sometimes you will watch these movies and you will see when the husband got home, he found out that his wife been raped. Then the rest of the movie is him going to find the man who done raped his wife. right? Because I've seen several movies like that where the antagonist was the cowboy or the mountain man or the lowlife that can come and assaulted his home and raped his wife and probably killed her or something. And then the husband, oh, he's on the vendetta for the rest of the movie looking for this guy. And you know what they do when they find him. Ain't no taking him to no law officer. They taking him out. Yeah, they taking him out. So yes, that's very true. You know, Don and I have discussed that several times. When we watch movies. We've discussed that very thing. That women were not safe without a man in those days. They just were not safe. Some of them weren't even safe with a man. You know, that was the reason why there used to be out in out old west towns, women could not be on the street by themselves at sunset. Women thought it was y'all trying to treat me like a second class citizen. No, it wasn't that. It was for her protection. Because at sunset, remember we're talking western towns, no street lights. They got coal oil lamps and stuff, which don't give you very much light. And you got all the little alleyways and nooks and crannies that's dark as I don't know what. All some cowboy had to do is snatch her, drag in there, and ain't nobody gonna be able to know what happened to her. So the law was at sunset, women could not walk the street alone. You know, some man had to walk her home or what have you. But anyway, that's a good discussion. That's a good fact. And that happened in black towns too, because there were black towns where out west, especially in Kansas, and in those black towns, they had the same rules and regulations because you had black murdering dogs running around doing the exact same thing.